On a cold, bitter morning in January 2011, inside a dimly lit courtroom in Brooklyn, a frail 93-year-old man stood before the judge. His body was worn and weakened by time, but his reputation still sent shivers down the spines of everyone in the room. As the judge handed down his sentence, there was a collective gasp because this was no ordinary criminal. The man standing before them was Sonny Franzese, one of the longest-serving and most feared Mafia underbosses in American history. For decades, he ruled the underworld with iron-fisted loyalty and violence. But what shocked everyone that day wasn't just the sentence. It was who had helped bring him down: his own son. This was the fall of a legend and the last chapter in the century-long reign of Sonny Franzese. Sonny was born on February 6, 1917, in Naples, Italy, to Carmine and Maria Franzese. Though born in Italy, his family had already settled in the United States and was only visiting Naples at the time of his birth. 6 months later, the family returned to their home in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, New York, where they operated a bakery. But this bakery was likely more than just a legitimate business. Sonny's father, also called the Lion, was a powerful figure in the Italian underworld, controlling various illegal enterprises in the city. His deep Mafia connections would have a lasting influence on Sonny, setting him on a path toward a life of crime. Growing up in a tough, working-class neighborhood, Sonny was exposed to the darker side of life from an early age. His father's reputation as a Mafia don provided him with a glimpse into the world of organized crime, and it wasn't long before he followed in his father's footsteps. Surrounded by crime and hardened by the streets of Brooklyn, young Sonny developed a reputation for toughness and a fearlessness that would define his later years. According to some accounts, Sonny was introduced to the Mafia at the tender age of 14, making him one of the youngest members in the criminal underworld. His ability to handle dangerous situations with calm resolve earned him respect early on. A key turning point came when Sonny dropped out of high school, abandoning formal education to fully immerse himself in the criminal activities that had shaped his upbringing. By his late teens, he was already involved with street gangs, deepening his ties to the criminal world. It didn't take long for his potential to be recognized by the powerful figures in organized crime. By the late 1930s, Sonny was working under the guidance of Joseph Profaci, the boss of the Profaci crime family, which would later become the Colombo family. Franzese's personal life was as complex as his early criminal career. While married to his first wife, with whom he had 3 children, Sonny began an affair with Cristina Capobianco, a 16-year-old cigarette girl at the Stork Club in Manhattan. The affair led to the birth of his son, Michael Franzese. To avoid the scandal of having a child out of wedlock, Capobianco married Frank Grillo, and for a time, Michael grew up believing Grillo was his biological father. Eventually, after the Mafia permitted Sonny to divorce his first wife, Grillo mysteriously disappeared, and Sonny married Capobianco, with whom he had 4 more children. Despite the turbulence in his personal life, Sonny's focus on his criminal endeavors never wavered. These early years, shaped by both his father's influence and the harsh realities of Brooklyn's streets, laid the foundation for Sonny's rise within the Mafia. His reputation for violence, combined with his ability to navigate both criminal and personal challenges, set the stage for his eventual ascent to power in one of New York's most notorious crime families. By the late 1930s, Sonny Franzese was already making waves in the criminal world. Working under Joseph Profaci, the powerful boss of the Profaci crime family, later renamed the Colombo crime family. His first brush with the law came in 1938, when he was arrested for assault, marking the beginning of his long and infamous career in organized crime. Franzese's violent nature was evident early on. In 1942, during World War II, he was drafted into the US Army, but his military service was short-lived. He was discharged the same year after being classified as psychoneurotic with pronounced homicidal tendencies. Despite his early run-ins with the law, Franzese quickly climbed the ranks in the Mafia. His influence grew, and by the 1950s, he was deeply involved in a wide range of criminal activities, from racketeering and fraud to loan sharking, all while operating out of New York City and New Jersey. His connections weren't limited to the underworld. Franzese was a regular at the iconic Copacabana nightclub, rubbing shoulders with celebrities like Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. He even became a close friend of boxer Rocky Graziano, further embedding himself in both the criminal and entertainment worlds. In 1950, Franzese was officially made into the Colombo crime family, working closely with Sebastian Buster Alloy, a high-ranking figure in the organization. His ruthlessness and loyalty didn't go unnoticed. By the mid-1950s, he was elevated to the rank of caporegime, or captain, by Joseph Profaci. His rise to power continued, and by 1963, he was promoted to underboss, the second in command, under Joseph Colombo. During this period, Franzese maintained the facade of a legitimate businessman, listing his official occupation as the owner of a dry cleaning store in Brooklyn. Sonny's influence wasn't limited to traditional mafia operations. In 1967, he acquired a financial stake in Buddha Records, using the company to launder mob money and engage in payola schemes, bribing disc jockeys to promote his interests. He even infiltrated Calla Records through its owner, Nate McCalla, extending his reach into the lucrative world of music until the label ceased operations in 1977. Franzese's rise to infamy was marked not only by his violent tendencies, but also by his ability to weave through legitimate industries, making him one of the most feared and respected figures in the Colombo crime family during the 1950s and 1960s. Perhaps the most famous crime associated with Sonny Franzese was his alleged involvement in a series of bank robberies across the United States during the late 1960s. It was said that Sonny was the mastermind behind several multi-million-dollar heists, a criminal operation that spanned multiple states. He wasn't directly on the ground robbing the banks, but his hand was on every aspect of the operation. Despite his attempts to keep a low profile, law enforcement was becoming increasingly aware of his activities. Sonny's name soon became notorious in law enforcement circles. In 1967, he was arrested and convicted of bank robbery, leading to a prison sentence of 50 years. This marked the beginning of his battle with the law, but it certainly didn't end his influence. Sonny Franzese's impact on popular culture was significant. As a feared and well-known gangster, he became a symbol of the golden era of organized crime. Movies, TV shows, and even books drew inspiration from characters like Franzese. While his name wasn't always explicitly mentioned, the shadow of his criminal career influenced countless portrayals of mafia figures in Hollywood. Shows like The Sopranos and movies such as Goodfellas were steeped in the kind of underworld that Sonny helped shape. But it wasn't just his crimes that left a mark on society, it was his code of silence, his unwavering loyalty to the Mafia. Even after being imprisoned, Sonny never cooperated with authorities, never turned on his fellow mobsters, and in doing so became something of a legend in the criminal world. This code would influence many future gangsters who looked up to men like Franzese. John Sonny Franzese's criminal career spanned decades, but like so many mobsters, his downfall was inevitable. After the 2004 incarceration of Colombo family underboss John Jackie DeRoss, Franzese was once again promoted to underboss in 2005 by then-family boss Thomas Gioeli. This marked Franzese's return to a position of power for the first time since his imprisonment in 1967. However, in May 2007, Franzese found himself back behind bars for violating parole. This would be the beginning of his final years entangled with the law. In June 2008, Franzese was indicted while still incarcerated on a slew of charges, including his participation in murders during the Colombo Wars of the early 1990s, stealing fur coats in New York City in the mid-1990s, and being involved in home invasions by police impersonators in Los Angeles in 2006. These charges showcased how, even in his later years, Franzese remained deeply connected to violent and organized criminal activities. In 2008, at the age of 91, Franzese faced additional charges alongside other Colombo family members for racketeering, robbery, extortion, narcotics trafficking, and loan sharking. Released from the Metropolitan Detention Center later that year, law enforcement still regarded him as the official underboss of the Colombo family, despite his advanced age and ongoing health issues. Franzese's ultimate betrayal came from within his own family. His son, John Franzese Jr., became a government informant, a decision that sent shockwaves through the Mafia world. In 2005, John Jr. secretly wore a wire to gather evidence against his father, culminating in his testimony against Sonny in court. John Jr. testified twice, revealing details of his father's extortion operations. This testimony led to the elder Franzese being sentenced to 8 years in prison in 2011 for extorting 2 Manhattan strip clubs, running a loan sharking operation, and extorting a pizzeria on Long Island. This trial marked a historical moment, as John Franzese Jr. became the first son of a New York mobster to testify against his own father. Despite being 93 years old at the time of sentencing, prosecutors requested a 12-year sentence due to the severity of the charges. Franzese's lawyers argued for leniency, citing a litany of health issues: partial blindness, deafness, heart problems, kidney issues, and gout. Even with these ailments, Franzese's request for compassionate release was denied in 2016, showing just how far his criminal influence reached. He remained in federal custody until his release on June 23, 2017, at the age of 100, making him the oldest inmate in the US federal prison system at the time. John Franzese's legacy in the Mafia world is both legendary and tragic. Known for his unyielding loyalty, he never cooperated with law enforcement, maintaining the Mafia's code of silence throughout his life. His ruthlessness, his deep involvement in organized crime, and the respect he garnered within the criminal underworld made him a fearsome figure. Yet, the betrayal by his own son, coupled with his numerous stints in prison, signaled the unraveling of a man who once wielded immense power. Outside of the criminal world, Franzese dabbled in the entertainment industry, financing films like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Deep Throat, both of which were financially successful ventures. His name even appeared as an associate producer on the 2003 film This Thing of Ours. Franzese lived an extraordinary life, from his rise as a feared Mafia underboss to his eventual fall at the hands of his own family. He died on February 24, 2020, at the age of 103, leaving behind a legacy that continues to intrigue both crime historians and popular culture. Buried in St. John's Cemetery in New York, Franzese remains a symbol of the golden era of organized crime. His life was a blend of violence, power, betrayal, and resilience. John Sonny Franzese's life was nothing short of extraordinary. From his early days as a streetwise kid in Brooklyn to becoming one of the most feared underbosses of the Colombo family, his story is filled with crime, loyalty, betrayal, and a legacy that still lingers in the underworld today. But the real question is, what do you think about Sonny's long and notorious career? Was he a man born into a life he couldn't escape, or did he embrace his criminal path with open arms? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the life of one of America's last old-school mobsters, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next crime story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Gravehaven.